So, I'm going to be sharing some stories on this channel that I either find entertaining or I feel have kind of shaped the person I am today. A lot of them are going to have to do with creativity and about, you know, being a creative person. And then there's going to be some that are just purely anecdotal experiences that just random stuff that has happened that I find funny, I guess. But I'm going to be doing this while I essentially am waiting for things to show up, But while I was thinking about a lot of these stories and experiences that I've had, I kind of came up with this topic that I want to talk about. And that is essentially the fine line that exists when you're a creative person between the joy in creating and the obligation, and how it ties into earning a living. Because I think most creative people, most artists want to earn a living with their artwork. And I think it makes total sense, right? If you find a lot of joy in creating, then of course the idea of making a living with something you find so much joy in makes total sense. But in my experience, there is a line there that if you cross it, and if you're not careful, if you're not aware of it, the joy simply goes away around the same time the money starts to show up. And there's a reason for this, and it doesn't have to be this way. There is a way to do it without this happening. But it has happened with me quite a few times where I start to kind of turn that corner and I'm like, wow, I'm actually making money with my creativity. But then it ends up being this cycle of, okay, well, this is what's working to make money, so now I must continue to do this same thing and maybe more of this same thing, to the point where essentially I'm getting burned out. Part of this is because I no longer have had the freedom to create whatever I wanted when I wanted. And that's a big part of being creative, is to have like an idea that pops into your head and say, you know what, like, I want to work on this right now. But a good example would be when I was just doing traditional artwork. So when I was just a traditional artist and I was doing art shows and gallery showings and things like that, I was obviously painting for the joy of painting and then putting those paintings out to sell. But after some time of doing that, you start to recognize, oh, this particular style or art piece does not sell. Nobody seems to want this. But this particular kind did. And for instance, in my case, I started finding that if I did any essential portrait of something like a celebrity or something like that in my own style, I had a very kind of, I was going for kind of a pop art aesthetic with some of my pieces. And I noticed that if it was a recognizable celebrity that I was doing a stylized image of, that would sell. Not for a lot, mind you, but it would sell. Whereas my own original concepts and ideas would just sit there and people would admire them. I would have people come by and be like, wow, this is really good work. I love this about it. I love that. I love the message behind it. But nobody wanted to buy it and own it. But then you put a stylized portrait of, a famous person, and people are like, ooh, I love that person. I want to own that. So it was almost like I was kind of, hijacking the popularity of something that already exists. And yes, I was applying my own style to it, but it wasn't authentically me. It wasn't, I didn't come up with the concept of this person being famous or have any stake in it. It was just, this person is recognizable and therefore people want a part of that. And and for a while, because it was the only thing I was doing for an income, I was going to like local art shows, I was doing farmers markets and art fairs and different types of art events in Los Angeles and Hollywood. And of course, makes sense, right? A lot of celebrities in those areas. So I was doing these art shows, and that was what was selling. And so I developed a system for churning out these stylized portraits, and nothing but these stylized portraits. And it turns out that, like, I quickly lost who I was as an artist. I was no longer even in my consideration, I was no longer an important part of the process. I felt like any artist with any amount of talent, any normal amount of talent, could come in and do something almost identical or very similar to what I was doing, because there wasn't anything novel to it. It was just stylized portraits of celebrities. So I lost the spirit behind what I was doing, and I felt like I was just working at a factory at that point. And therefore there was no joy in it. Anytime I would sit down and be like, okay, you know what, today I'm going to paint or draw or create something that I want to, that I find that I want to just to make me happy. Every time I would do that, there would be this voice inside me that would say, hey, don't do that, because that's not going to make you money. And mind you, also at this time, I'm a single father of 3 kids, 3 very, very young kids. And I do want to give credit and shout out to my parents, who really, really helped me out during that time. I honestly could not have done any of that stuff if it weren't for them, but I had a great support system, and I had an opportunity to do the art thing full time. And I quickly realized, like, I was just as unhappy doing that particular kind of art and struggling to make money as I would have been working for somebody else. And so I ended up getting an actual just regular job, working in a warehouse, working full time, and was actually happier at that time in my life, because I was able to go back to creating based on my own passion and joy, instead of creating for the sake of selling. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I do believe there is a way to do this where you don't lose that joy. And I think that's kind of where I'm at now with this channel. This channel is kind of the main platform for me for kind of pursuing this goal of keeping my creative freedom and potentially generating an income from it. But there's no obligation to do that for me. There's no urgency to do that. And there's nobody telling me I have to create a very specific way, or you can't create this way. It's just me being my authentic self. And if that ends up doing something monetarily, then that's great. If it doesn't, that's also great, because the point of this channel is to keep that joy and that creative freedom. And just that is the ultimate treasure for me of this channel. So yeah, I'll be sharing some stories that kind of align with a lot of what I just talked about, and some funny ones too that are just random, ridiculous things that have happened to me. But until next time, I'll catch you guys later.